that the rematch is happening. I'm curious, how has fight camp been this time preparing for a guy, you not only beat him, but it was one of the more spectacular performances of your career?
Olha, de verdade, aquela já passou. A gente está focado nessa agora e com certeza vai ser um grande show. Experiência, tem 2, 3 anos aquela luta, então com certeza ele querendo provar que pode vencer e eu querendo provar que eu posso vencer mais uma vez. Então aquela já foi, vamos focar nessa.
That one has passed. We're focused on this one right now. That was experience. I mean, he's trying to prove that he can beat me. I'm trying to prove that I can beat him again. Let's put that in the past and let's focus on this one.
Charles Oliveira, you had one hand on the UFC title in that fight with Charles. There is a world where if you zag instead of zig this weekend, that he could maybe stop you from getting that title again or even steal the Conor fight from you. In that sense, has Charles sort of become this manifestation of someone in your way, a roadblock that you have to overcome for your career to reach the heights that you want to reach?
That's a great perspective. I mean, I guess, yeah, you could definitely say that. I just think the way that I see it is that this is the way that it was always supposed to be. That this opportunity, getting my hand raised on Saturday night, gets me to the #1 contender spot, and I fight for the title next. And it just so happens that it's the guy who shattered my dreams of becoming the lightweight champion. In this sport, almost does not count. You could have 10 other referees in that fight with me and Charles at UFC 262, and maybe the other 10 step in. I have not hung my hat on that. I have no regrets. I'm not mad at the sport. That's the way the sport goes. But yeah, ultimately, Charles is just another guy with 2 arms and 2 legs who's my size, and I get to perform in front of a Madison Square Garden crowd, get to blow the roof off the place, steal the show, and to reintroduce myself to the mixed martial arts world and the sporting world of who I am, why I fight, and who I fight for, and it's going to be a blast. And I think you could not have scripted it any better. People love a comeback story, and this one's going to be special.
You've had a lot of rematches, the Jim Miller rematch, the Nick Lentz trilogy. I'm curious, do you approach rematches differently the second, third time around as opposed to the first one?
Olha, de verdade, você tem que estar sempre melhorando. E é isso que eu faço. Eu volto para a academia para melhorar. Não importa se eu venci o cara ou se eu já perdi. Eu só quero melhorar, sabe? Então eu venho aqui e faço a diferença. Eu já lutei contra o Jim Miller e eu tinha perdido e eu vim bem melhor e venci. Eu tinha vencido o Nick Lentz e eu fui lá e venci de novo. E o plano é esse. Eu já venci o Michael Chandler e eu quero vencer de novo. Eu estou pronto para isso.
The plan is always to get better, always to improve. That's why we go back to the gym. That's what the fighter does. We go back, you just work at it, you improve things that you need to. Lost Jim Miller, I went back and went out there and beat him. Nick, same thing. And now Michael Chandler, I know I beat him, but is always getting better and trying to improve for the next fight.
If Charles gets your back, are you going to jump and slam yourself backwards again, or are you going to move on from that?
I don't know, because I don't know who Charles is fighting. I don't know that guy. He makes ill-advised decisions at times, so we'll see. We'll see what happens. It will be vintage Michael Chandler, foot on the gas and nonstop action. So don't blink and buy that pay-per-view.
He used the phrase that Michael Chandler 1.0 was out for blood. Michael Chandler 2.0 is now out for the belt, and his plan is to show you the exit sign and separate you from your consciousness. So I'm curious, are you expecting a different style or approach from Michael this time around?
Legal, eu não vou estar lá, parado, Eu vou estar fazendo acontecer. Eu acho que a gente tem que planejar coisas e fazer acontecer, A mesma vontade que ele tem de se tornar campeão pela primeira vez, eu tenho a vontade de se tornar campeão pela segunda. O campeão do peso leve, você sabe quem é. Eu estou aqui, eu estou pronto para isso. Eu vou se tornar campeão de novo. Então a gente tem que ir um passo de cada vez. Meu primeiro passo é Michael Chandler. Eu já venci esse cara uma vez e vou vencer de novo.
Listen, I'm going to be there. He wants to be a champion for the first time. I want to be the champion again. I mean, the champion of the lightweight division has a name. You know this. And I beat Michael Chandler once, and I'm going to beat Michael Chandler again.
Mike, right here. Normally when you get, there's like a highlight reel finish from one guy, when the rematch possibly comes around, they seem kind of reluctant to take that rematch because their thought process is like, what can I do to top that first performance? Charles, that was the peak of his career, some would say, and then now he's rematching you and there's no belt on the line in the co-main event. Were you surprised that he even accepted this when they presented it to him?
Not surprised at all. I mean, Charles would fight anybody. Charles will fight anybody. I realize the man I'm up against. I realize the the dangers that he poses. He is a decorated veteran, decorated former champion, and a decorated former foe of mine who beat me. I think, in these type of situations, there's a lot of talks that are happening behind the scenes. I mean, it just depends on what your motivation is. I think Charles Oliveira's motivation is his conversations with the UFC go very simple in Portuguese. I want to fight for the title, and I'm sure the UFC said, okay, if you want to fight for the title, you got to get through this guy. This is the guy. And when his name got thrown out there after the Conor stuff started falling through and it looked like he wasn't coming back anytime soon, Charles Oliveira is the perfect opponent for me. It is the perfect time, and you could not have scripted it any better. So I'm not surprised whatsoever because Charles is a stud.
He also said, this is how it's always supposed to be because, he was close to the lightweight title. You're the one that kept him from the title. He's never won at Madison Square Garden. He has another opportunity to not just avenge a loss, but get his first win in MSG. So what does this fight do for you? Is it just another step to the title, or is there other underlying meaning behind this fight for you?
Olha, de verdade, todos os caras vêm aqui e eles falam um monte de coisas. Que eles vão parar, que eles vão vencer, que eles vão fazer. Isso é o normal, todas as vezes que você chega aqui é a mesma coisa. Lutar aqui é mágico, sabe? Ter milhares de pessoas torcendo e vibrando por você é mágico. Eu só quero simplesmente ser eu e fazer história. É isso que vai acontecer. Dia 16 eu vou andar para frente, eu vou caminhar para frente, eu vou procurar essa luta. Eu vou caçar esse cara o tempo inteiro.
I think a lot of people come and talk. Everybody comes here and says the same thing. They talk the talk. They say they have plans about things, that they're gonna do something. But you have to come here and do things. This is a magical stage, a great place to be. I mean, the energy of the crowd and everybody around you is magical as well. And I'm going to be there in this fight all along. I'm going to be pushing forward, charging forward, and on the 16th, you're going to see it happening.
And there's like a group of lightweights, like you, Poirier, Charles. Like you always seem one win away. Like even if you lose 2 in a row, you win, you could fight for the title next. Like, do you kind of agree with that? Like you're in that group of like Dustin lost, but then he won, and all of a sudden he's fighting for the title again.
Yeah, I mean, it's track record, it's strength of schedule. I'm just happy I'm in this position now. No, I don't even have a fraction of the UFC fights that Poirier has, or Charles has, or some of these guys. But now I've been in the UFC long enough and fought the toughest guys, and obviously knocked out Dan Hooker. Now Dan Hooker's ranked ahead of me because he has come back and had a resurgence. I mean, it's the most violent and the most exciting division in the UFC, in the sporting world. And I am so blessed to be a part of it, so blessed to be in it. And on Saturday night, I will be very blessed to be the highest ranked guy in it, not named Arman Sarukian or Islam Makhachev, and solidifying myself as the #1 contender.
You just coming off that really close debated loss against Arman Sarukian. A lot of people thought you won that fight. What did you learn in a loss that makes you better for this fight?
Pô, foi uma luta que muita gente achou que eu venci, outros achou que eu perdi. Eu achei que eu venci o primeiro e o terceiro round, mas essa luta já foi, já passou. Eu só não quero ficar parado, esperando igual eu esperei na próxima luta, na última luta. Então por isso que eu vim caçar. Eu só vou andar para frente, não importa o que está acontecendo. Eu só vou andar para frente, sabe? É isso que eu planejei, é isso que eu coloquei na cabeça. Lógico, eu tenho uma estratégia montada, mas eu quero só caçar. Eu vou procurar essa luta, eu vou procurar a vitória o tempo inteiro.
I know that that was a very highly debatable. Some people think that he won. I think I won the first and the third round, but that's in the past right now. The one thing, I'm not going to wait. I'm not going to wait for the fight to come to me. I'm going to push forward, hunt, and get to that fight all along. I know I have a strategy plan and I have something in my head, but I will be looking for a fight all throughout that fight.
And you obviously are one of the most exciting fighters in the sport.
The most. I am the most, absolutely. And you guys will remember on Saturday night.
And, that has been for better or worse sometimes, right? And you hear fighters giving analysis of this, and they're just like, I hope Michael Chandler can contain that part of him that's been in there. Is that something you have been working on at all through this time? And will any of that work, if so, matter when there's 20,000 people screaming inside Madison Square Garden?
Madison Square Garden does things to a man when he's locked inside of an octagon that few will ever be able to experience, and you cannot put it into words. But that's also why I took this fight, and that's also another layer of the story. A guy who has not won a fight in Madison Square Garden. I have not won a fight in Madison Square Garden. Once again, it's another hill to climb. It's another opportunity to prove to myself that I have continued to grow. you're going to see a lot different version of me. As I've said, Chandler 1.0 was out for blood. Chandler 2.0 is out for the belt. That does not mean it's going to be any less exciting. It does not mean that I'm going to take my foot off the gas. It does not mean it's going to be any less violent, because I only know how to fight one way, and that is extremely fast-paced and extremely violent. It's just going to be a little bit more calculated, and I will separate Charles Oliveira from consciousness on Saturday night.
Thank you. And also, is there anybody else you think you would fight, like maybe you would enjoy fighting in the future in the lightweight division? Maybe some new names, maybe anybody you are thinking about would make great fight against Chandler?
There's some fights at 170 that I would love. Going up to 170, I really enjoyed a training camp at 170. The hoodwink, the facade of, oh my gosh, I get to go do a whole training camp and then fight at 170 and not have to cut down to 155, which is not an easy task for me. The only reason I've never missed weight and the only reason I've never pulled out of a fight is because I have extreme discipline and I live like a champion. But it is an absolute bear to be where I'm at right now. But it's all part of the job. But some fights at 170 will be awesome. We kicked around some ideas, but obviously we landed on Charles because originally I wanted to stay at 170 because I had already prepared my body and mind for a 170 fight for a year and a half, the better part of a year and a half. But I was able to improvise, adapt, and overcome and get myself down to where I need to be, and I'm going to perform like a bat out of hell on Saturday night at 155.